Hello, Happy New Year! Welcome to Big Picture Monday. My name is Cali Black, here with all the context you need to totally rock this week's Come Follow Me readings. Here we go. The Book of Mormon. What an exciting week. It is the first week of the new year. I feel like that's when we're all like, okay, I'm gonna rock this year. Making all your new goals, and I hope scripture study is part of it. Because hey, even if you make a goal up here and you only hit it half the time, that is so much better than nothing at all. That's what I think. And the Lord loves effort. So any effort, put it in to Come Follow Me, the Book of Mormon. I am so excited, and I love that we have this first week to focus on the introductory pages. These are pages that, let's be honest, most of us skip over when we read. Like, if you're going to start reading the Book of Mormon, you turn to 1 Nephi chapter 1. But there is so much great stuff in these introductory pages. Not only is there great content, but I feel like it really kind of zooms us out. You know, I love getting the big picture of things, and I feel like that's what these introductory pages do so perfectly, is we get to zoom out and be like, oh right, here's where the Book of Mormon came from, here's why we have it, here's its purposes, right? Like, kind of get that all in our head before we then jump into the story in 600 BC with Nephi, right? Like, get this big picture first and kind of just, I don't know, bask in the goodness of the Book of Mormon and get really excited for it this year. And I have to say, a lot of people start looking for new resources at the turn of every new year. If you love Big Picture Mondays, it would mean the world to me if you shared that information with someone, whether that means sending them the videos, the links, or just texting them and being like, hey, do you know about these videos? I love each year there's like more and more people who are able to come here for some context, and then I can send you on your way to feel a little more confident as you then approach the scriptures and try and invite your own personal revelation and figure out your own application. So share this. I bet there's people who are struggling, and it might help if they just had the quick story before they dive in. And then I just have to point out, today's the day. Open up your new study guides if you have one, and you can see the information I'm talking about here in the video, all written down, plus tons more information, plus a fun Book of Mormon map, plus 7 spiritual questions to walk you through. And then today's also the day that the 1 minute scripture study book in the Book of Mormon starts. So if you want to start with day 1, go for it. So much new stuff. I love it. Okay, introductory pages. There are basically 6 parts. I don't want to say pages because some of the pages are more than some of the sections are more than others. 6 sections. That's a good way to say it. 6 sections of introductory pages that we're going to look at, and they can be separated into 3 different time periods of when they were written. This is where I think the context really helps. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to talk through the 3 different time periods that these 6 documents were written in to kind of give us some context and understand what's going on. So this is not necessarily the order that you'll see them in your scriptures, but this is chronologically the order that they were written in, okay? Okay, let's start with the first one. And the first time period we're going to start with is Book of Mormon times. Book of Mormon times. And that is the title page. The title page of the Book of Mormon is original to the Book of Mormon. It was on the gold plates. That it is part of what was inscribed on the gold plates. That is the only thing of the introductory pages that is actually original to the entire document. Now, to picture who was writing this, we're going to have to fast forward to the end of the Book of Mormon, but stay with me here, to when we talk about Moroni. Moroni, if you can picture him, he was like the last righteous person in a land where everything had just been so wicked. Christ had already come, everyone had been good for a while, but now there's just been so much wickedness. Moroni's father, Mormon, had compiled all these records together, and he had rewritten a lot of them and added his own commentary, but then he was killed, and then we now have Moroni, his son. And Moroni adds some more of his own words and puts the Book of Ether in there, kind of gets everything ready to go. And Moroni is now going to go bury these gold plates in a hill, hoping with full faith that someone in the future will be led by God to that exact spot so that they can get those records. I mean, talk about faith. It's amazing. I love it. And so Moroni wrote what we call the title page. It's very short, but basically what he's doing is he's explaining where these records came from. I'm sure he doesn't know exactly how this is all going to go down when someone finds it in the future. So he's explaining where these records came from and the purpose for them. He talks about how God commanded him and others before him to keep these records so that they can be brought forth. And he also says that they were abridged and written for the Lamanites, the Jews, and the Gentiles. And he also writes a bunch of purposes for the Book of Mormon, including convincing all that Jesus is the Christ. Beautiful. So look for that. Look for where the plates came from and the purposes as you read the title page, and picture Moroni by himself inscribing this on plates before he buries them in a hill, not knowing that they're going to be there for 1,400 years before someone else gets them. That brings us to our next time period. So the next time period is the Restoration time period, okay? 1800s, Joseph Smith's time. We have 3 of the introductory pages that are from this time. That is the testimony of the 3 witnesses, the testimony of the 8 witnesses, and the testimony of Joseph Smith. So that's easy to remember. The 3 testimonies are all from the Restoration time period. Let's start with the 3 witnesses and 8 witnesses. I feel like those stories are pretty self-explanatory. You know where those came from. But I do want you to picture Joseph Smith received the gold plates in 1827. And the 3 witnesses and the 8 witnesses were in 1829. So for almost 2 years, Joseph Smith had been the only person who had, as an official witness, seen the plates, as someone who could openly testify of it and be an official witness. He had just been doing it on his own. And finally, 2 years later, this is in June for the 3 witnesses, and just the next month, July, for the 8 witnesses, he is given permission to show it. First of the 3, do you know who the 3 are? Oliver Cowdery, David Whitmer, and Martin Harris. And then to the 8, just a month later. And then as these groups of 3 and 8 saw the plates and were able to touch them and hold them, they wrote down their testimonies and they signed their names. And they never, ever rescinded what they wrote. All right, the next one, Joseph Smith, the testimony of Joseph Smith is what it's called. Basically what it is it's actually an excerpt from Joseph Smith history. Joseph Smith history is the story of Joseph's life that Joseph himself wrote, and we find that in the Pearl of Great Price. So this is just an excerpt. This is just a little portion of it that's been taken and put in the very beginning of our Book of Mormon. Joseph wrote Joseph Smith history in the year, starting in the year 1838. So we're in like 27 and 29 for when Joseph first received the plates and had those witnesses. So it's been a few years now, and he's writing down. That's how we know about the first vision, right? Like Joseph Smith history. We love it. But the portion that's at the beginning of our Book of Mormon is the story, in Joseph's own words, of how he even learned about the gold plates and his experience and his process. He talks about how starting in 1823, right? Yes, 1823, the angel Moroni. Sometimes we call him Angel Moroni without making the connection that this is Moroni that we just talked about, who buried the plates in the ground, right? Or we kind of know that, but we don't always make that connection together. Like, oh yes, that's right. This is Moroni from the Book of Mormon, who is allowed to appear to Joseph and tell him about this record and shows him where it is. And Joseph wasn't able to get the gold plates right then. He talks about how for the next 4 years, he went to Hill Cumorah in September every single year, and he met with Angel Moroni, and Moroni would give him more instruction and say, not quite yet. And finally, in 1827, Joseph was given permission to take the plates. So that's what you'll find in the testimony of Joseph Smith. It's Joseph Smith's story of how the plates even came to be and how he learned about them and his experience with that. As you read these 3 documents from the Restoration period, I just invite you to think about all of the sacrifice, all of the crazy sacrifice that all of these people gave in order for us to have the Book of Mormon. It was not, okay, and here's a new book of scripture, right? That we just like pull off the shelf. Great. People were risking their lives and their reputations all for this book. Prior to the 3 and 8 witnesses, people were just trusting that Joseph actually had these gold plates that he was interpreting. Like, what is going on? I just think it's beautiful how much sacrifice was required to bring this book to us. Okay, so now we've got Moroni sacrificing to literally create the plates and make sure we can have them. We've now got the Restoration time period, the sacrifices that were made to bring them to us. That brings us to our final time period, which is just like modern time period today. Not literally today, but in the historical sense, today. The church republished the scriptures in 1981. And when they did this, they added 2 documents to the introductory pages. And those are the, make sure I say the right words, introduction and the brief explanation. So the introduction and the brief explanation are modern editions. The church just published them, so they're not attributed to a certain author, just the church. Basically, the introduction, think of the introduction as if someone picked up this book and had no context for it at all. They just found it on the side of the road, they've never heard of our church, and they open it up and they read the introduction. The introduction would tell them what it's about. It basically merges together like, okay, what Moroni wrote about the purposes and where the plates came from, but then it also tells that, so it tells the story of like Nephites and Lamanites, and then it also tells the story of, and here's how Joseph Smith brought it, like how he translated it, and then it also gives some promises for those who read the Book of Mormon. So great little introduction to the Book of Mormon. And then the brief explanation is super interesting. You're probably going to want to come back to this one a lot because it's this very clear layout of the 4 different sources for all of the scriptures included in the Book of Mormon, and it explains like the order of the books and why they're in which order. Like it's a bunch of information. That's the kind of stuff that I love. It explains like which ones were abridged by Mormon and where did the Book of Ether come from and all this stuff. So just lots of factual stuff. And it also includes it makes very clear what was included in the gold plates and what have been additions by the church. Meaning those chapter summaries that we get at the top of the chapters, those were not in the plates. That's something that was just added for convenience. Same thing with footnotes. That was not in the gold plates, right? So it just makes it very clear as to what was in the plates that Joseph Smith translated versus what the church then added. Okay, that's it. That's the 6 documents in the 3 different time periods that I think just give us a beautiful overview. Now it is your turn. Go and read. Go and study. Read through each one of these with a pen in hand. If you've never tried writing or taking notes from your scriptures, or you feel like you're rusty at it, give it a try this week. Give it a try. Read something, and if something makes you stop and think, just wait and write something down. It is the coolest experience to just have revelation come. And I use revelation in like the smallest definition possible. Beautiful, tiny little insights. Oh, I should probably work on that. That is revelation. That is personal revelation. And I love that it's so accessible to us. So go forth, do your own reading and studying. I'll still share my personal focus question, but I do invite you to consider what your focus question is. What is the Spirit inviting you for this week to study on? My question that I'm going to focus on this week is, where do I find Jesus in these scriptures? In the introduction and other things, it talks about how the most important event in the Book of Mormon is Jesus Christ coming to the Americas. And so I want to just look for all of this evidence of Jesus Christ as I read this week, but also kind of as my goal for the year. Where is Jesus in the Book of Mormon? I know he's everywhere, but I want to really dive into that and see where else I can find him. Okay, have a great week and happy studying.